The simple answer is because if it were to become solvable, you wouldn't have a franchise anymore. But that's the cynical answer. It's also not very interesting or nuanced. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Toxeyboyo, and I kind of want to have a conversation that I began about 8 years ago, way back in the early days of this channel when I was recording and editing everything on a Samsung Galaxy S8, and that is kind of the state of Five Nights at Freddy's as a franchise as it comes to lore and how solvability and, you know, theory crafting has kind of taken over the concept of the horror franchise as a whole. And the funny thing about that is that I felt that way back in 2018 when there were 5 games. No, there were 6 games by then, because I don't even know if I did that before or after Ultimate Custom Night came out. There may have been 7 games. But here we are, 8 years later, and I still feel much the same way. And you may be wondering why I'm talking about this now. Well, recently, as I'm recording this, last week, Pop You Playtime Chapter 5 came out, and a lot of people in the content creation space have been less than pleased with it, because it's become clear that the franchise has gone the way of greed and milking the franchise, trying to get every last drop they can. I mean, they've charged you about $100 for these chapters by now, and it's just cliffhanger after cliffhanger after cliffhanger. More characters, more lore, more merchandise. They still want to make their movie. You know, and we've seen this with other mascot horror games, like Hello Neighbor, how they were desperate to get MatPat to do a video about them because lore is what attracts players, especially young players these days. Same thing with Bendy, same thing with Ban Ban, same thing with Baldi. But Baldi is actually the only good game that we're going to be talking about here today. And what it all comes down to is that obviously the more content you can make, the more money you can make. And you create pathways for more content by leaving a million questions that can be answered or not answered, or if you're going to answer them, they can be answered any sort of different way. And you generate online discussion by posing those questions as frequently as possible. And there is no greater example of this than Five Nights at Freddy, so let's talk about that. Now, we've known for a long time that Scott likes to use the new game or the current game to clear up questions or misconceptions from the previous game. He said as much in a Steam community post over like a decade ago, but the problem is, in doing so, he poses infinitely more questions at the exact same time. I want to talk to you guys about what a good plot twist is and what requires, or what a plot twist requires in order to be good. First, it has to make sense within the story, obviously. It can't be so, you know, beyond believability that it just shatters your immersion. That's a bad twist. The answer has to be at least reasonably possible to arrive at on your own before it's revealed to you. Otherwise, it's a bad twist. And it can't insult your intelligence. When I think of a bad twist, I think of Murder on the Orient Express. Spend the whole movie wondering who committed the murder. Well, the answer is that all of them did. Things like that are what happens when an author or a writer is so desperate to be unpredictable and to surprise you no matter the cost, that they're willing to sacrifice the integrity of the story being told. On the flip side of that, one of the greatest twists of all time would be in The Usual Suspects, when you find out the true identity of Kaiser Soze, or another Kevin Spacey film, Seven, when you find out that Brad Pitt's character is the incarnation of Wrath, and that the killer set himself up to die in order to make his plan come true. Now, I'm willing to bet that if you're here watching this video about Five Nights at Freddy's and you know what I'm talking about, then you have no idea what any of those movies are, but that's okay. The point is, in order for a twist to be effective, it has to be feasible. It has to have enough clues put there for you to be like, okay, I can see that. And then when you go back and watch the film again, or play the game again, or read the story again, you could see the building blocks that were laid. Pardon the interruption, it's your boy Toxeyboyo, and I wanted to take a brief moment to let you know about the Toxic Touch Productions Patreon. I'm not currently monetized on YouTube, but I still want to bring you the best content that I possibly can. I want to make those videos that you love, and I want them to be the best that they can be. But I need a little help. That's where you guys come in. If you want to support me directly, you can head on over to patreon.com/ToxicTouchProductions or click the link in the description or the pinned comment. For even just $5 a month, you can get your name included in the credits at the end of the video, gain access to exclusive channels on the Discord, and you get specialized merch at no extra cost. It only gets better as the tiers go higher. Go check it out. Thanks for listening and thanks for supporting my dreams. Now let's get back to the video. So let's talk about how Five Nights at Freddy's approaches this. The first game is very light on lore. All you know is that 5 kids went missing, the animatronic suit started smelling really bad and leaking blood and mucus, the restaurant got shut down, it's back now, and at some point in the year 1987, somebody got bit. And then the guy who's talking to you on the phone dies on the 4th night. Well, Scott really wants to surprise you in the second game. So, actually, another child died that we never talked about. There's 6 dead children. And at the very beginning of Five Nights at Freddy's 2, we're talking about the grand reopening. And we talk about how the previous night guard complained about the animatronics trying to get into the room, which doesn't make any sense, but, you know, the building's not going to run out of power. Your flashlight will. These things that very directly reference the first game and make it pretty clear that this is meant to be a sequel, but hang on a second. Bone Guy's alive. How is that possible? Well, it's a prequel. It's a prequel. And so, okay, this takes place in the year 87, which means that the bite happens at some point this year. I guess that's one question answered, but now we have the question of, you know, if there was a spare suit in the back, a yellow one, and somebody used it, now none of them are acting right, does that relate to Golden Freddy? What's up with this 6th child who died? Who's this purple guy? Where did these withered animatronics come from if the old location is not the one from the first game? Because now this tells you that 2 new Freddy's locations exist. And there's something called Fredbear's Family Diner. Isn't that great? Well, let's talk about some of that. In the third game, you find out that the yellow suit that was used is not Golden Freddy, the only yellow suit that exists in the 2 previous games. It's actually Spring Bonnie. Something that didn't exist until this game, so how are we possibly supposed to figure things like that out? And to make matters worse, when you get to the 4th game, you see an animatronic bite a child's head. We know that the bite of 87 involved someone's frontal lobe. Well, Phone Guy says that you can survive without your frontal lobe, which implies that the person who was bitten in 87 doesn't die. So this can't be the bite of 87. Well, you'd be right about that. It's another bite from 1983 that wasn't mentioned for some reason. I don't know what the purpose is of having a second bite that is actually more lore relevant than the 87 bite ever was, because this involved the death of the child of the person who helped invent the animatronics and killed all the children in the first place. Yep. Isn't that great? And then by this point you might be wondering, well, why is the purple guy killing these people, or killing these children? What does he gain from that? Oh, he's studying soul magic. Don't you know? Yeah, so in the next game, you find out that there's even more animatronics that are more technologically advanced than the toy animatronics from 1987. They can inflate balloons at their fingertips, make ice cream, take song requests, and they live in this bunker underneath a house for some reason. They're rented out from here, I think, and there was a pizzeria, but we'll never see that one. So that's what, 8 pizzerias at this point? And yeah, so William Afton, a name that came from the non-canon book, by the way. I would really rather not talk about the books. But yeah, William Afton, he's got 2 dead kids because of these machines. And he's like, let's send my last living kid to go deal with more machines. So we've got these more advanced animatronics. By the way, good luck putting Sister Location anywhere on the timeline. You simply can't, because we know that 30 years pass between the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 1, which takes place after 2, and the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 3. So, because of what happens at the end of Sister Location with Mike Afton getting his organs and bones ripped out and becoming the second purple guy. Yeah, this guy's purple physically. His dad's purple metaphorically. I don't understand what lore advantage is coming from there being a second purple guy. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. So, if Sister Location takes place before Five Nights at Freddy's 2, or around the same time as Five Nights at Freddy's 2, well then that means that Michael sat around with no organs or bones for 30 years. What was he doing? Because at the end of Sister Location, he says, "I'm going to come find you." And he says it pretty ominously. And then it leads you to believe that he goes through those first couple games hunting his father down. But if Sister Location takes place after what the hell? If it takes place after Five Nights at Freddy's 1, no, it's just, no matter what, the 30 years makes it complicated. Because William Afton sat in that safe room at the Fnaf 2 location? Maybe. For 30 years. And nobody ever found him. I guess that's not the super important part. What is important is what happens after that in Pizzeria Simulator, when Henry, the guy who also only exists in the games up to this point, or I guess he does appear very briefly in FNAF World, and I say very briefly because he dies in FNAF World. So yeah, Henry, the father of the child who is killed and becomes the marionette, never got mentioned before this game, but here he is now. And also helped create the animatronics. Wouldn't it be great if he was ever mentioned before? Whatever. In official material. I don't care about the books. I will never care about the books. So he creates this whole elaborate setup. He buys a Fazbear's location, and Michael Afton ends up running it. And they gather up all the remaining animatronics, and they burn the place down, and it kills everybody except William Afton. But he does die, because Ultimate Custom Night seems to be William Afton in hell, or in purgatory of some kind, being tortured by Golden Freddy unto eternity. All of the signs point to that. Okay, cool. It's over. By the way, it should have been over in the third game, because we helped all the souls find peace. Unless you want to tell me that Golden Freddy grabbed all the souls back up and said, "Nope, you're not moving on until I move on." Sorry about what's happening to my voice right now. I think I'm getting sick. You guys aren't moving on until I move on, and I'm not moving on until I'm ready to do so. Well, that's okay, because here comes Help Wanted, where things get meta, because Scott thinks he's so funny. Yeah, it turns out that the original games exist in universe and were made, or were like licensed by Fazbear Entertainment to try to like discredit the stories being told about the massacres. Because we don't even know how many dead children there are at this point. There could be 2 whole incidents. We're looking at like maybe 11 dead children. But if those games are real games within the world of Five Nights at Freddy's, why do we even factor them into the lore still? Are we supposed to? Are we supposed to factor them into the lore still, or are we supposed to act like they don't matter anymore? And the Steel Wool era that we're in now, that's the new canon. Because, and you could hand wave that away by saying, "Oh, well, it's just a joke. You know, it's not meant to matter at all." But there are things that happen in Help Wanted that do matter. Like, you rebuild the digital consciousness of William Afton. William Afton, who died, by the way. He got burnt, like, what, 3 times? He died, by the way. But it's okay, because he uploaded his mind to Skynet. And he's back now. And that becomes relevant when you get to Security Breach. So that's cool. And then, I mean, God knows how far into the future Security Breach is. And when you're playing that game or watching the game, you have to wonder, what's up with Freddy? Why does he act so differently than the other animatronics? Why do they... First of all, why do they all have personalities? Why does Chica eat? Why is Roxy insecure? Why is Monty egotistical? But then why is Freddy benevolent? None of it makes a lick of sense. And then, oh, here's Afton again, but don't worry, because that ending isn't the canon ending, even though it's the only one that's like fully animated with full motion video. All the other ones are just graphic novels. This is where all the budget went, but that's not the real ending. That's great. But to this day, the only sequel that we have to Security Breach is Ruin. And it's like, yeah, here's the Mimic. Oh, you don't know the Mimic? You weren't reading the books? The goddamn books. Scott said a long time ago that the books weren't specifically canon, but they did introduce ideas to help contextualize the games. Such as Remnant. Yeah, when I said Soul Juice earlier, that's what that is. In Sister Location, when Michael gets his insides ripped out by the scooper, the purpose of the scooper is to extract soul juice from machines. So if William Afton was doing that kind of research before getting spring-locked, is that the reason he was killing the children? Was he trying to discover a way to bring his children back? Does he care about his children? He doesn't seem to, since he sent Michael into this pit of hell. And that's another reason that it's hard to put this game on the timeline. When would William have sent his son down there? Did he tell him, hey, go check out what's going on in the basement, and then get spring-locked? Because if so, what took 30 years? The ending of the Custom Night scenario, where Michael's talking and you find out that he is the son of Springtrap, it seems to line up with Springtrap's return. So I think it's meant to signify that those 30 years line up. So what could have possibly taken so long? But yeah, not only do we have Remnant, we also have like illusion discs. Yeah, so that's like a plausible explanation for why the Nightmare animatronics look like that, but that's not the only plausible explanation for why the Nightmare animatronics look like that. There's also Nightmare gas. If you're just playing the games, you're missing out on all of this stuff, but then boom, here it is, it's relevant. Like the Mimic. Yeah, remember Tiger Rock? That was from the Pizzaplex, Tiger Rock. Yeah, that's the new main villain of the franchise. But not only is it the new main villain of the franchise, it's actually been around this entire time. Yeah, because the lore wasn't complicated enough, we're actually going to go way back in time to the 1970s. And yeah, this guy named Edwin Murray is actually the guy who created Chica and Roxy and damn near everything that Henry and William got famous for creating. How does that enrich the story? How does that make the plot or the lore more interesting? Oh, they ripped off the ideas. How are we finding that out after 11 years? Why does that matter? What does that change? I'll tell you what it changes. Absolutely nothing. But yeah, he had a son. The son is dead. He had a wife. The wife is dead. Sounds like William Afton. And he made a machine that mimics human behavior, including violence. Where'd he go after the 70s? Well, he's under the Pizzaplex. But you know what else is under the Pizzaplex? The Fnaf 6 location. Okay. Is the Fnaf 6 location built on top of Murray's Costume Manor, or whatever it's called? And then the Pizzaplex is built on top of that? Because first of all, how is Fazbear Entertainment still around? I don't care how much they tried to rehab their reputation. True Crime YouTube would have never let them come back. Everybody would know about their dirty laundry. So I don't understand how not only they're still alive, but they're liquid enough to build a mega mall. But they don't seem to be too liquid because they built it on top of a sinkhole, because somehow the FNAF 6 location burnt into the ground. So I guess the Mimic has like an infinite battery because it's been operational since the 1970s. Because, I mean, I have to assume that Security Breach takes place in the future from now, like in the 2030s or something like that. But we don't know, because in the 1980s, they had facial recognition software and could inflate balloons at their fingertips. So how am I supposed to guess when this is taking place based on the technology that we're looking at? There's no rhyme or reason. I say all of that to say that this franchise is taking you for a fool. And it always has been. How many game theory specifically made by MatPat videos are there where he's like, the final timeline, I finally solved, or we finally know? There's hundreds of videos like that on this platform. And they all say different things. Because the point is not for you to understand everything. Scott could have very easily explained what was in the box in terms that make sense. It's the pieces put together, but would the fans accept it that way? Just say you didn't know. Or say that you had an answer, but you don't think it would fly anymore. Just tell the truth. Tell the truth that if you were to just lay out all the cards and tell us what the actual timeline is, without releasing 85 books and 24 spin-offs and a kart racer that I'm sure is going to be lore relevant, like it's Kingdom Hearts for some reason, just tell us what it is. I mean, we have movies now. There's 2 movies now. And even they only serve to complicate the lore even more. Because at the end of the day, that's the currency. Your confusion is what funds this franchise. Your eagerness to have the answers, but the answers come at a cost. How many concrete, absolute facts do we really have in the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline versus things that we speculate on and largely agree upon? And then compare that to how many things that we just don't know anything about. Because what's to stop Steel Wool from releasing a game where we find out that Edwin Murray didn't actually create the Mimic, and he stole the designs from Smitty Werben Jaegerman Jensen? How deep does this rabbit hole go? And underneath Murray's costume manor is actually the very first Fredbear's Family Diner. Yeah. I mean, Christ's sake. Anyway, that's just, I mean, those are just my very unorganized thoughts on Five Nights at Freddy's as a franchise. I think that, you know, I mean, I've grown up playing Silent Hill and Resident Evil, and Silent Hill's a franchise where a lot of things are left open to interpretation. It's kind of like the eye of the beholder thing. Resident Evil, you have to read a lot of documents that are in the game in order to understand exactly what's going on. But those things are absolute. If you watch 10 different videos explaining the entire lore of Resident Evil to get you ready for Requiem, they're going to say the same things. And those events will take place in the same year. It's not going to vary drastically. You're not going to have other people in the Resident Evil YouTube space reacting to those videos and being like, that's not right. Because we have the information. And this is a franchise that's 30 years old. You know? Five Nights at Freddy's has been around for 1/3 of that. And it seems like it has almost as many games, but and it may even have more appeal in today's climate, but it doesn't. Resident Evil continues to find success and appeal because the games are fun and exciting to play, and you're ready to see your favorite character again, and you want to know what happens next. The reason that you're excited for the next Five Nights at Freddy's game is so that you can understand what happened last time. I want to say that I don't think that's sustainable, but it seems to be. They've been doing it for a long-ass time. We're hopping between prequels and sequels, and we're putting decades worth of time skips in between these games. Another thing is that William sitting in that safe room for 30 years means that Henry was just doing what for 30 years? Was he trying to find his daughter? What was he up to? You know? When did he become aware that his daughter was in the marionette? How long did it take him to build Lefty? Why did he kill himself? Is Charlotte at peace? Is Cassidy at peace? What's the crying child's name? Why don't we have a name for the crying child after 11 years of just calling him the crying child? Well, we call him Evan. Yeah, but that's not quite right, is it? And even people that will tell you that his name is Evan are like, it's kind of the best we could do. Whatever. Midnight Motorist is still unsolved, despite the fact that it should be straightforward and relatively simple. But if that's William Afton, why is he orange? I don't know. I just... this is the type of stuff that is why I left the franchise way back when Pizza Sim came out. That was the first one I just didn't play. No, FNAF World was the first one I didn't play. But yeah, I mean, ironically enough, the ones that were free were the ones that I skipped. And I tried to play Security Breach for like 20 minutes when it was free on PlayStation a couple years ago. But it still ran like dog shit because Steelwool moved on from that to work on Ruin and Secret of the Mimic and Help 1 to 2. They didn't have any time to get Security Breach to a playable state. So, they didn't. I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, this changes nothing. And I know that I'm playing with fire, challenging the Five Nights at Freddy's fan base, because you guys have your minds made up. You're going to play and or watch Markiplier play the next game, because there will be another game. Probably going to be a big game this year, other than five laps at Freddy's. And we're going to keep doing this, and maybe in 8 more years, I'll have more to say. But for now, who is your favorite animatronic? I'm still a fan of Foxy from the first game. He's probably my favorite. I like him in the second game too. He looks mostly the same. His head shape's a little different, and his eye patch is up. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Foxy. Just regular Foxy the Pirate. And I miss him. I would like to see him again. Anyway, that's all I got for you. I'll see you later.